The Empire State Building, The Race to the Sky. Part 1. The Dream Begins. When people talk about icons of the 20th century, symbols of ambition, innovation, and sheer human will, the Empire State Building almost always enters the conversation. For decades, it was the tallest building on the planet. It weathered the Great Depression, watched New York change around it, and became a landmark recognized all over the world. But behind its iconic status lies a story far more dramatic than most realize, a story of rivalry, risk, and record-breaking construction. Let's rewind to the 1920s. New York City was booming. Skyscrapers were popping up across Manhattan like iron forests. In just a few decades, the city had risen from 5-story walk-ups to buildings scraping the clouds. And it wasn't just engineering progress, it was pride. Being the tallest meant being the best. So, when the Chrysler Building started rising in the late 1920s, the world was watching. At the time, it seemed nothing could surpass it. Walter Chrysler, head of the automobile empire, wanted to put his mark on the skyline. His building was sleek, modern, and like his cars, proudly American. When it topped out at 1,046 feet, it was hailed as a triumph. But the celebration was short-lived, because another group was already planning a rival. A taller rival. Behind that project was John J. Raskob, a man you might not recognize by name, but whose vision literally changed the skyline. Raskob was a former executive at General Motors. Watching Chrysler's victory, he posed a provocative question to his team: how high can we build it so that it won't fall over? That simple, bold challenge would give birth to one of the most legendary buildings in the world. Together with Al Smith, former governor of New York and a beloved figure in the city, Raskob launched the Empire State Incorporated project. Smith, known for his charisma and deep roots in New York politics, became the public face of the effort. The site they selected was the former Waldorf Astoria Hotel on 5th Avenue and 34th Street, prime Manhattan real estate. The goal? To beat Chrysler. Not just by a few feet, but by a massive, undeniable margin. They hired the architecture firm Shreve, Lamb and Harmon. The team worked fast. Their early designs were ambitious, clean, and built for height. The final blueprint called for a building 1,000 feet tall, but Raskob wasn't satisfied. He wanted insurance. Something that would keep them ahead even if Chrysler made last-minute changes. So, they added a spire, a towering 200-foot steel mast that would be used, allegedly, as a mooring mast for airships. In reality, it was a brilliant move to secure the height record. At 1,250 feet, the Empire State Building would stand 204 feet taller than Chrysler. But now came the real challenge: building it. And fast. The stock market had just crashed. The Great Depression was setting in. Investors were scared. Jobs were vanishing. But somehow, Raskob secured financing, and the team pressed forward. Ground was broken on March 17, 1930. What happened next shocked the world. Part 2. Building the Impossible. From the very beginning, the pace of construction was nothing short of astonishing. The plan was not just to build tall, it was to build fast. The goal? Complete the skyscraper in just over a year. The project became a beacon of hope in a time of despair. As the Great Depression deepened, thousands of skilled and unskilled workers found employment on the site. And although wages were low, around $15 a week, the opportunity to earn steady money was rare, and many leapt at the chance. At its peak, more than 3,400 workers labored on the Empire State Building. Many of them were recent immigrants. Some were Native American Mohawk ironworkers, famed for their fearlessness working at dizzying heights. It was said they walked the steel beams as if they were sidewalks. What made the speed of construction possible was meticulous planning. Materials were pre-ordered and pre-cut off-site, then delivered just in time. Every rivet, every steel beam, every stone facade had its moment, like pieces in a massive, airborne puzzle. And the numbers were mind-boggling. Each week, the building rose about 4.5 stories. The steel framework was erected at a rate of 1 story per day, a world record. On some days, it climbed even faster. The entire structure required 60,000 tons of steel, 10 million bricks, 200,000 cubic feet of Indiana limestone and granite, and over 6,000 windows. Over 57,000 tons of concrete formed its base. The job was dangerous. Workers had no harnesses, no safety nets. Hard hats were rare. Yet injuries were relatively few, thanks to discipline, coordination, and sheer experience. Still, 5 workers lost their lives during construction, a remarkably low number, though each loss was a tragedy. Photos from that era show workers perched hundreds of feet above the ground, eating lunch on steel beams, with no guardrails in sight. These iconic images would later become symbols of the working-class courage that defined the skyscraper era. Inside, the layout was designed for efficiency. The building would house offices, observation decks, and broadcasting equipment. The elevators were cutting-edge for their time. 73 total, including high-speed cars that could whisk visitors to the top in less than a minute. Astonishingly, the entire construction process took just 410 days. On May 1, 1931, just over a year after it began, President Herbert Hoover pressed a button in Washington, D.C., lighting up the tower in New York. The Empire State Building was officially complete. And for the first time in history, the world had a building that crossed the 100-story threshold. But as remarkable as its construction was, the story didn't end there. In fact, for the next several years, the Empire State Building would struggle to find its place in a city and a world suffering through hard times. Part 3. An Empty Giant. The building may have been a feat of engineering, but in 1931, it opened its doors to a world that was not ready or able to fill its offices. The Great Depression had gutted the economy. Businesses were closing, not expanding. And as this colossal tower stood proudly over Manhattan, much of its space stood empty. In its first year, the building was barely 25% occupied. Entire floors sat in silence. Offices remained dark. Hallways echoed with the absence of tenants. Some joked that the only thing the building was full of was air. It didn't take long for critics to give it a cruel nickname, the Empty State Building. To make matters worse, the developers had taken a huge financial gamble. With so many resources poured into construction, they were now facing mounting debt and very little income. Even the observation deck, which today is a tourist magnet, wasn't pulling in crowds in the early years. But despite its bleak start, the Empire State Building had something powerful in its corner: symbolism. It represented hope, progress, American ingenuity. It was proof that even in the darkest economic times, people could dream and build something extraordinary. And slowly, that symbol began to attract attention. Hollywood noticed. Films like King Kong in 1933 used the Empire State Building as the backdrop for one of cinema's most iconic scenes. Audiences watched in awe as the giant ape scaled the building, swatting planes from its pinnacle. That image alone may have done more for the tower's fame than any marketing campaign ever could. The observation deck began drawing visitors, not just for the view, but for the experience. For a chance to stand atop the tallest structure in the world. Tourists came. Writers came. Photographers came. And slowly but surely, the building began to fill. Tenants trickled in. Broadcasting companies installed antennas on the roof. The building became a hub for radio, and eventually, television. It found new purpose, new income. And with each passing year, it cemented its place not just in the New York skyline, but in American culture. Part 4. Tested by time and tragedy. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, the Empire State Building was finally becoming what its creators had envisioned, a bustling center of commerce and communication. But it wasn't just a hub for business, it was fast becoming a symbol of national resilience. And when World War II erupted, that symbolism took on new meaning. During the war, the building's mast was used for more than just radio signals. It became a lookout point for potential enemy aircraft. Air raid drills were conducted at the building, and patriotic lighting displays turned the tower into a glowing beacon of American pride. Red, white, and blue illuminated the New York skyline, a reminder that the spirit of the nation still stood tall. But even after the war, the building's story was far from calm. On a foggy Saturday morning, July 28, 1945, a B-25 Mitchell bomber, flying from Bedford, Massachusetts to Newark, New Jersey, became lost in dense clouds over Manhattan. Disoriented, the pilot accidentally flew into the Empire State Building at the 79th floor. The crash killed 14 people and caused a fire that burned for nearly 40 minutes, the only fire ever to reach that height at the time. Remarkably, the building withstood the impact. Structural damage was repaired quickly. Within days, most offices had reopened. The building's endurance only added to its mystique. It had not only survived the Depression but also war and disaster, and still stood tall. As the years passed, the Empire State Building adapted. It was no longer the newest, but it still held the title of tallest. That would remain the case until 1970, when the North Tower of the World Trade Center was completed. But even in the face of taller rivals, the Empire State Building held its ground in public imagination. It had something more than just height. It had history, identity, the soul. Part 5. The Icon in a Modern World. In the 21st century, the Empire State Building stands at a curious crossroads. No longer the tallest, no longer the newest, but still, undeniably, iconic. Surrounded by the glass and steel towers of Midtown Manhattan, the building has become a living contrast between past and present. Its old-school Art Deco elegance in a world of minimalist design. Its solid limestone when most buildings are sheer glass. But rather than be overshadowed, the Empire State Building has continued to evolve, and even thrive. One of its most visible transformations has been in lighting. In the early years, the building's lights were basic white. But over time, new systems allowed for colorful, symbolic displays. Today, its LED system can project 16 million colors in patterns that react to holidays, national events, cultural celebrations, and even real-time music. During Pride Month, it shines in rainbow hues. On Earth Day, it glows green. During the Super Bowl, it reflects the teams playing. And in moments of national mourning, it quietly turns dark, a shared symbol of grief. It's also become a canvas for storytelling. In 2015, the building's facade was turned into a living screen for a special event called Projecting Change. Images of endangered species were projected across the southern face of the tower, a 375-foot tall lion, a whale, a snow leopard. It was a moment of art, activism, and awe, and a reminder that even a nearly century-old building could still inspire. Inside, the Empire State Building has undergone continuous renovation. Observation decks have been modernized. Interactive exhibits now tell the story of the building in immersive fashion. There are VR experiences, high-resolution LED walls, and multimedia journeys that transport visitors back to the 1930s. And then, of course, there's the view. On clear days, you can see 5 states from the top. From the 86th or the 102nd floor, the sprawl of New York City stretches in every direction, a living, breathing organism. Sunsets from the tower are the stuff of poetry. Proposals happen daily. Tourists weep. Locals rediscover their city. Part 6. Legacy in Stone and Steel. Nearly a century after it first pierced the clouds above Manhattan, the Empire State Building stands not just as a feat of engineering, but as a monument to the human spirit. It was built in the shadow of economic collapse, and yet it rose. It faced doubt, criticism, even disaster, and still it stood tall. Its story is one of ambition made real. Of visionaries who didn't just ask what could be built, but how high they could build it. It is a building that has always been more than just a building. It's a mirror for every generation. For the 1930s, it was a bold declaration in a bleak time. For the war years, it was a lookout and a lantern. For the post-war boom, a monument to American progress. For the modern era, it's become a relic reimagined, one that grows greener, smarter, and more connected with each passing year. And yet, no matter how much changes, one thing remains constant: awe. Even in a world of megastructures, even in cities filled with gleaming towers twice its height, the Empire State Building has not lost its magic. Tourists still gasp. New Yorkers still glance up. Films still feature its silhouette. Artists still draw inspiration from its symmetry. It remains, unmistakably, the soul of a skyline. Every beam in its frame, every stone in its facade, every light that shines from its crown is a tribute to a time when we believed the sky wasn't the limit, but only the beginning. It is not just an American landmark, it is a global symbol. A structure that tells a story not only about New York, but about all of us. About grit, creativity, perseverance, and pride. As long as it stands, It will remind us of what people can do when they dream without boundaries, and then have the courage to act. This is the story of the Empire State Building. And though it has already stood for nearly 100 years, its legacy is still being written, one visitor, one memory, one sunrise at a time. Long may it rise.